Welcome back here to the City League. I'm Luke Donovan. Alongside me, our special guest, Dr. Nick Elam, an assistant professor of educational leadership at Ball State University, created the Elam Ending, which we have here today, and it's proven to be quite entertaining in some of these games. So, Dr. Elam, what brought you to create this ending?
Well, it's a really proud night for me to be here to see the Elam come to life here at City League, and thank you for having me on your show. Well, what brought me to create what has become known as the Elam Ending? So I'm a lifelong basketball fan. I've loved basketball since I was 5 years old, and so it was always disheartening to me to see the style of play become so warped late in the game. Kind of all the air goes out of the arena, all the athleticism goes off the court. You get slim deficits that are just impossible to overcome late in games, and so all these different phenomena are attributable to the game clock in some way. And so it was back in 2007 when I started to think, well, maybe if you got rid of the clock at the end of the game, that would address all these issues. So that started an effort for me, an intensive research effort to make sure that I really believed in this idea. And then once I believed in the idea, then I started reaching out to people in the basketball world about implementing the idea. And so that was a 10-year process before TBT, the basketball tournament, finally implemented it in 2017. But now we've seen it at the Canadian Elite Basketball League. Here we're seeing it at the City League. We're seeing it at dozens of grassroots level leagues and events throughout the United States and abroad. And then, of course, most notably at the NBA All-Star Game in 2020 and 2021.
So when getting your feedback as you were starting to formulate this idea, was it about making it easier for comebacks to happen, or just keeping the style of basketball the way it was for the normal parts of the game?
I love this question. So, yeah, because I do think there are a variety of benefits for the Elam Ending, but the benefits I prioritize really are just to maintain a natural style of play through the end of every game. So you get rid of the fouling strategy, you get rid of the stalling strategy, you get rid of these rushed and just desperate shots. So that in itself, to me, even if it didn't create more comebacks, that in itself would be enough of a benefit to justify the Elam Ending. But as a side benefit, yeah, you take away all those forces that work against trailing teams, and now you're getting more late comebacks, less predictable finishes, and it adds more drama to it. So, and every game ends with a swish of a net. We've seen both teams tonight in the women's game and the game that just was completed, end with some flair. We saw a transition layup to win the women's game. We saw a nice deep three there to put the finishing touches on a lopsided game in this last game. So even in those games, I mean, it allows the leading team to really lean into the finish.
Yeah, and certainly going along with that, it's 9 points here at the City League to win once we start with that Elam Ending. So why is it 9 points, and what are some other point ranges maybe you tried to keep it entertaining yet to also keep it brief?
Yeah, so what's beautiful about the Elam Ending is there is a certain amount of flexibility to it and adaptability. Every league and event can kind of adapt it to its own its own settings, whatever it prefers. So at TBT we tried +7, and then we tried it for a few years and realized we need to bump that up to +8. In the Canadian Elite Basketball League, it's +9 setting because they have a little bit of a higher scoring rate. Every league kind of has to calibrate its own settings. Here at City League, they're trying the +9 setting, and if that works, great. If it needs to be adjusted, it could easily be adjusted in years to come. So that's one great thing about it, is that you can try out a certain setting and then adjust as necessary.
And do you see any limitations or boundaries with this ending you created, or do you think maybe at some point down the road maybe it's implemented in some higher standing leagues?
So boundaries is a great question. I do think that this format is going to continue to grow up to the highest levels of play. The NBA, the WNBA, NCAA Division I college basketball, the Olympics, all those things. And I think it's going to take that process of growing through these grassroots events and leagues to get there. And I think in a league like this, or an event like this, especially if it plays running clock, that doesn't have a shot clock, where otherwise you might see some really manipulative strategies down the stretch, it basically gets rid of that. And we get that natural style of play all the way through to the end of the game. You could watch the last possession that we saw in both games. You could watch that and say, hey, this just looks like good, crisp basketball. And a lot of times that's not the case when you're watching a game where the clock has such an overbearing influence.
Yeah, and certainly, so going along with that, without a shot clock and without a lot of it, the main goal, if I'm hearing you correctly, was just to provide a new way to end the game that didn't result around strategy, more of just gameplay.
Well, I think basketball, as we come to know it, really lacks strategy because once you get to a certain stage of a game, you only have one option, and that is to foul. And that's when you're on defense. When you're ahead and you're on offense, you just stall and play four corners. There's really only one good option. And if you've only got one good option, I don't think you can really call that strategy. So, with the Elam Ending, it takes away the clock. Now you're trying to reach that target score. Now both teams have their full complement of plays and players. I think the Elam Ending adds more strategy to the game that we didn't see before.
Well, I like your take on it, and we appreciate this idea you've created. It's provided a lot of great finishes to these games here at the City League. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
We'll be back with just a few moments for the final game today. It is Renew Indy versus Brookside CDC.